Next speaker is Ganesh Kumar from Mississippi State University. Pitfalls and honey traps in aquaculture farm management, an economic perspective.
I won't call myself as an economist by any means, but I'll call myself as a farm manager. Farm management is a specialized topic within economics which deals with the financial management as well as the production and economic relationship between input and output. So that's what farm management is. But it's one of the most misunderstood as well as most misused tools as far as in aquaculture. As you all know, I mean, aquaculture definitely has a bright future, not only in the United States, all across the globe. But key management decisions has to be made, and each of those decisions need at most planning. But if you just make a look at some of the economics findings, especially general economic, the initial studies or regarding any species, there is a tendency to just put up the economic budget related to it. And usually when you have a budget, you'll show a profit, and the profit is always positive one, and usually a big one. That means for every $1 you get 10 times the returns, or 100% ROI of 100% or 200%. That's a very common thing, that is seen in with many of the aquaculture budgets that you see. But out of the 20,000 species, out of the 200 species that is actually commercially spawned, how many species is actually raised commercially in a large scale? I just had a talk with Jimmy, and he was saying that, look at the top 10 species, it's pretty much the same guys who is playing even in the United States. So the major volume is actually affected by the adoption of technology. So why certain things are not adopted is very important to know. One of the key things that we have to understand is about these economic concepts that are misunderstood. First is about the production concepts. Some of the key production concepts are not understood both in science field as well as in the farming side. So I'm in no way an extension. I have 100% research, so you may be thinking why I'm over here. And I'm not a teacher, so don't think that I'm teaching you. But the key thing is about to understand certain fundamental concepts of production, and to understand what are the entirety of cost concepts. And also another issue that we see when biologists produce budgets is immediately jumping into feasibility conclusions. All those things needs to be understood immediately. So what is profit maximization? Profit maximization in grad school, you always see that profit is a difference between revenue and cost. So revenue and cost can be, a difference between revenue and cost can be positive. $1 is profit, but that maximization happens only at one particular point. The difference between that revenue and cost is maximized only at one particular point, and that is the key concept of production maximization and profit maximization as such. It's very difficult to conceive from a budget, which is the most common tool to understand about profit. But in economic measures, you can, if you understand the marginality concept, that means for every additional input, as long as the revenue is also generated equally, that is good. You can keep on going with the production. But the maximization is happening when the marginal cost, that means the additional cost required to produce that additional fish, is equal to the fish price. That's where the maximization happens. So yield maximization, the key understanding is yield maximization does not give you profit maximization. So it's always underneath. So just look at an easy way to understand this thing is MSY. How many of you know MSY? MSY and MEY. MSY is maximum sustainable yield, and MEY is just a bit below. It's always below the MSY, that is the maximum economic yield. So it's pretty much the same concept that is in production too. So that's a very poorly understood concept among biologists. So when you say that, okay, $1,000 profit and $10 profit, that maximization of profit is actually most important rather than revenue production. So everybody talks about how much I produce and how much I sell. It's not that. It's the difference between the revenue and cost is what we are looking to. And producer is actually trying to maximize his profit. Very rare cases, you tend to maximize revenue. A classical case is large-scale retailers like Target or Walmart. They tend to price kill, price match. That's a case where you maximize revenues rather than maximize profit. So from an input perspective, that happens, or that is based on the price ratio. That means when the input prices are higher, you tend to use those costly inputs at a slower rate or at a much smaller rate. So it is depending upon the marginal productivity, and that marginal productivity is actually depending upon the price ratio. That means the cost of the feed and the cost of the fish. So that's the cost of the fish goes up, you don't worry about it. You try to go closer to the maximization of yield. But when the fish prices go down, you see that farmers tend to reduce their intensities and all. That is very much common in agriculture as well as in our fish industry. So marginal productivity is the most important thing that we have to look in. So the key rationale is to always economize or rationalize the use of the costlier input. In aquaculture, in most of the aquaculture case, it's the feed, the juveniles or the fingerlings that you use, labor and energy. So that's what I mean. As the fish price or as the feed prices goes, the tendency is to go with a lower intensity of production, and as the fish prices go up, there is an encouragement among farmers to increase the stocking density or increase the intensity of production as such. So that is the fundamental reason why profit maximization is a rationale for farmers. Another thing is the cost concept. This is much more easier to understand, but one of the most misused tool in economics. Not only in aquaculture, but this is common in agriculture too. One of the most commonly used tool is the enterprise budget, where you try to list all the costs that are associated. Most of the farmers or most of the extension agent has a good grasp of what are the variable costs, the things that change across the production. That means most of the inputs, the interest rates, and all those things. But devotion and optimism, that's one thing that I just want to put into years and years, especially extension scientists who work for 20, 30 years on a particular technology. We human beings are born to have pro-innovation bias as well as confirmation bias. I hope at least everybody knows about the confirmation bias by now. But pro-innovation bias is a tendency to conceive only the images that are positive about the technology and to disregard the negativity of any particular technology. Confirmation bias is like you want to hear only what you want to hear. So lack of understanding is another concept that is associated with consumption. So the end product is actually really wishful enterprise budget. So the most common tool that any biologist or non-economist use is actually called as economic engineering, where a survey data is not available and they try to, at the best interest, try to develop an economic budget. So it's not a bad thing, especially because surveys are very time consuming and costly, so you need to have the information correct. The idea is not to extrapolate from whatever that you found in. It's always about averages averages gives more sense rather than using what you really found out, So average of the yields and the prices are key thing that needs to be used in budgets rather than just actual values. And another important thing is when you're using secondary data, make sure that you have account for inflation of prices. So account for the prices. One of the most common issue with use of budgets and extrapolation of economic analysis is the use of non-statistically different treatment means. For example, treatment A has 12,000 pounds to an acre and treatment B has 11,000 pounds to an acre. They are not statistically significant, but when you look at an economic perspective, yeah, there is difference, but It's nothing. It's straightforward. I mean, 95% of the time, if you can't replicate that result, don't use that result. Just go by the prices of that technology or the input. So whichever that is cheaper, go by that, not by the non-statistically different treatment mean. So because it will lead to extrapolation of economic differences. The most common thing of misuse is once again regarding the misuse of opportunity cost and the ghost cost. Ghost cost is nothing but the forgotten cost. Most of the budgets does not account for some of the key ingredients, especially in I deal with a lot of pond aquaculture. So the most important thing that I see missing is the cost of renovation and the lack of putting the correct interest rate and the depreciation and the backup equipments. Some of the as intensification goes high, you miss certain important things. But the most common thing that is missed in a biologically engineered economic budget is the opportunity cost. The best example for an opportunity cost is something that is foregone, that for the best interest. Most of the regulatory cost that you see in aquaculture can be categorized under the foregone cost or the opportunity cost, because farmers often has to spend very minimal amount in permits. That's a direct cost, but he has to forego something, like he has to involve at least 2 or 3 people just to have his production running or to keep up with all the permits. So those are opportunity costs that are being forgotten down there. So that's called the cost of the next best alternative that is foregone. So that needs to be accounted, really speaking. For example, the best way to say is all the key production functions or key production factors: land, labor, capital, and management. All of them have opportunity cost associated with it. So you need to account for all of that opportunity cost in budget. So profits, if you don't account for all those opportunity costs, you will have a pseudo profit, which is misleading to the farmers. Depreciation of all the items. One of the key items that I want to show is the ponds. Ponds are not accounted. Many times you just have the cost for production or digging of a pond, and after that you don't account for the management of the ponds or renovation of the ponds. So ponds do depreciate. So if you account for the correct of all the cost, including the opportunity cost, you will usually see a lower profit, and that is mostly the realistic profit rather than just accounting for the cash cost alone. Time value of money is something that is very important. When you see, if you ask somebody, I mean, if you need $1,000 right now or after 2 years, he'll always take the $1,000 right now rather than 2 years, because there is time value of money. Which I just want to ask this question: what will you take a business which is yielding 200K in 2 years or 500K in 4 years?
200K in 2 years. I
No.
might be dead in 4 years.
Now it all depends upon the discounting rate or how you finalize your present value. If the discounting rate that you use or the opportunity cost of the capital is higher, it's better to take the smaller ones right now. So you need to make sure that there is time value of payback period is the most easiest thing that farmers understand, but that is not the true investment feasibility. The true investment feasibility, most common one, is the MIRR or the modified internal rate of returns. So you need to make sure that the returns are actually converted to the present value. Cash flow is key. You may always see that there are suboptimal practices that are happening in the industry, like not able to feed continuously year-round. These are all because cash flow is a key concern for the farmers. Many of the scientists does not, because we are so devotion, we are ready with this technology, but the farmers are not adopting. It's probably because many of the times it is because of the cash flow issues. So farming strategies, they try to maximize their business goals, sometimes not the profit. They can't optimize the profit. So advise the farmers as extension agents, try to make sure that, especially the initial entrepreneurs, make sure that all the costs are accounted for and they have a marketing plan which accounts for the 4 P's of production, that is product, price, place, and promotion, before they land up into any of the new ventures. There are a lot of predatory investments going around and telling that, okay, I'm having 200 to 300 percentage returns to investment, but it may not be, and it may not be even cash flowing. So make sure that all of those things are there. So reiterating those, the role of extension agents are very key in percolating. If they don't have an economic support, make sure that even an agriculture economist can really help out and tell you exactly how to find out the real fixed cost. Usually the fixed cost is the ones that are really difficult to tabulate. Farmer or a biologist can easily find out the variable cost. The fixed cost is the one that is really misleading most of the time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.